guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This video contains 10 reasons why you should potentially consider picking up the new looter shooter, Anthem. And it's also going to contain one fairly big reason why you should maybe not buy the game, but I'll get to that at the end. Anthem is the most recent release in a genre of games that also contains Destiny 2, you've got The Division in there, Diablo even. It's really a kind of sprawling genre because all those games feel certainly aesthetically very different, but ultimately there are some core tenets that pull them all together. Anthem, being developed by BioWare, is undoubtedly going to leave its mark on that genre in the same ways that all those previous games have done in their own respects. For example, for a long time, I really wished there was a game out there that was like a World of Warcraft, but a little bit more kind of space-agey and first person. And then Destiny came along, and I was a very happy camper. And then I played Destiny for a while, and I played Destiny 2, and I played Forsaken, and I was like, man, I would really like there to be a game like Destiny, but with a story that I felt was a little bit more fleshed out. I've tried to get into the Destiny story, and I mean, literally on my desk right now, I've got the Grimoire Anthology, or at least the first issue of it, and I love this thing. It's fantastic, and it's got some great writing in there, but I was hungry for more, and Anthem, it seems like at least, is going to fill that void. You see, Destiny was never really a game where you jumped in, played the campaign, and then went, okay, that was the experience that this game was created in order to kind of provide. You always sort of felt like the real core part of Destiny was that grind at the end and was that end game. But with Anthem, it looks like they're going for a little bit more of a balance. You've certainly got more focus on the story at least than you do in a game like Destiny. And that's something that excites me as a person that really likes stories in these kinds of games. If you like BioWare games, if you like the stories that they tell in those sorts of games, and you like games like Destiny or The Division, etc., then this is gonna no doubt be a really interesting meld of those two things. However, it is worth noting that because there's more focus on story, certain other things have had to have been dropped. And so, for example, at launch, there is no PvP. If that worries you, the good news is that there's also no season pass for this game. You pay your $60, you buy the game, and then you've basically got the entire experience going forward, it seems. There is free content coming after launch. We don't really know what that's gonna be just yet, but maybe that will include a PvP mode. They've also talked a little bit about their microtransaction system. There are microtransactions, but they are only cosmetic, and there are no kind of loot boxy type things either. So it seems like they're going in a pretty positive direction for microtransactions. I mean, I understand that if they're planning to keep this game evolving over time, which is another thing that they are seeking to do, then having some way to keep the income flowing is just gonna be a necessary evil. And I really respect the fact that they're bringing in microtransactions, but they're not making it the kind of gamble that we've become used to in order to get the stuff that you want, and it is staying all cosmetic. So I mean, I think that gets a pretty resounding thumbs up. Also, the cosmetic system itself is really interesting. It's separate to Destiny. In something like Destiny, you've got shaders, right? You can put a shader on a piece of armor and change the kind of texture on the shader. Whereas in Anthem, the armor itself is always cosmetic. The thing that changes your stats are your components. You've got 6 components on your kind of javelin armor suit, and those components are gonna determine what kind of crazy stats you've got on at a given time. Your pilot inside the suit is the one that levels up, but it's those components, not the armor itself, that's gonna change your ability. And as such, you'll be able to basically customize whatever you want to look like without having to feel like you're sacrificing your power in order to do so. This is a change that I love. I think that it's something that Destiny suffers from a little bit, the feeling that, oh man, I got this really cool airplane helmet, but I can't wear it right now because it's not my highest light item. And yes, I know there are ways around that in Destiny. I'm just saying that I think this system might be even better. Another cool thing that's kind of related to this is that gear, when it drops in the world, so let's say you find a piece of armor after you kill a big bad enemy, that will always drop based on your pilot level rather than what you have equipped. So again, Destiny is a really easy comparison here because it's a game that certainly on launch suffered from this problem. You get to the max level of your actual kind of character, and then you have this extra leveling system that got brought in, which is tied to the armor itself. And as such, you needed to make sure that you had the right items in your inventory when you were getting armor so that it would base it on what you were currently having in your inventory, what your potential max light would be, all of this kind of crazy stuff going on there. Whereas in this game, it's going to be a bit more straightforward. If your pilot is level 350, then the gear that's going to drop is going to know that you're 350, regardless of if you're naked, not wearing any components in your javelin or not. Staying on this topic, there's also no equip limit for your character builds. So let's say you want to completely spec out and go absolutely crazy with all your most rare items, components, things like that to put on your suit. You can do that. Again, comparing to Destiny, I'm sorry I keep making these comparisons, but it's because I play a lot of Destiny right now. In that game, you can only equip one exotic weapon and one exotic piece of armor at a time. And so let's say you really like one particular exotic handgun, but then you also really want to equip an exotic rocket launcher. You're out of luck. You have to switch between one and the other. Whereas in this game, you can just equip them all at the same time, as long as you have actual equip slots available, and there's no limit. Now, speaking of things like switching between handguns and rocket launchers and stuff like that, there's going to be ways in-game for you to switch your class and completely create a loadout to quickly switch to, which is again something that I feel like Destiny really suffers from, and thankfully that's been kind of patched up by DIM, Destiny Item Manager, but it's still like a non-in-game solution that can be a little bit difficult to use depending on your setup and things like that. However, in Anthem, really straightforward, you create a class, you can quickly switch to it, makes life really easy. Now, one thing that should be noted about this is that as much as you can quickly switch to that class, you can't do that when you've entered a mission and are doing stuff on the go. You need to choose your kind of loadout before you go into the mission or contract or whatever, and then stick with that till the end, as far as I'm aware. One thing that they have done to make this a little bit less annoying is that if you quit out of a mission midway through, you'll keep all the XP that you earned as you were going through, you'll keep any gear, etc. that you would have earned as you were making your progress through that mission, so you won't really be penalized for leaving so much if it's too difficult or what have you, and that should hopefully make the whole not being able to switch your class thing just a little bit more forgiving. The cool thing as well is if your friend is having some trouble and you decide to jump in, the mission is going to scale based on the fact that you've joined, and you'll also be scaled down a bit if you're crazy powerful so that you're not just walking through the opposition, but they're not just punishing you for no reason. The reason they do that is that the loot that you're going to get from helping your lower level friend is still going to be gear that's going to level you up. It's still going to be powerful gear. And that means that whereas, again, in a game like Destiny, you can run through the story with a friend and basically be none the better for it, maybe you earn some bright engrams, in this game, you're actually incentivized to pull those blueberries through and get them invested in the end game experience, because that entire time that you're helping them out and sherpering them through experiences that they might be having trouble with or what have you, you're going to still be leveling up your character. This should also mean that when you start getting to the sort of strongholdy end game activities, there's still reason to go back and do older ones, even if they came out 6 months or a year ago or something like that. Destiny really struggles with this. You go to a raid like Leviathan, for example, there's not really any reason to do it. I mean, why would you? You're only going to want to do the raids that give you powerful gear, because that's going to then advance your light level, and that's the only thing that's going to boost you up and make you more powerful. It means that basically everyone turns their attention away from those experiences that were released earlier on, which is a shame because the devs pour so much time into crafting them. Some of them are really awesome, and it makes the new stuff feel a bit more repetitive because you are having to repeat it more often. I really am happy about the loot scaling thing that they're doing here. I think that's going to help the game's longevity massively. Another thing that I'm just so grateful for that is going to help with repetition is the fact that there is no reason in Anthem to start a new character. There just isn't one. You can start a new character if you want to, as far as I'm aware, but you're not really incentivized to do it. There's not really much point. I mean, the gear that you're going to be earning at a given time is going to have a higher chance of being for the Javelin suit that you're currently wearing, but could also be for the other Javelin suits available. And you can just switch into those other suits and you're not really gonna be penalized for doing so. Again, assuming that you do it before you enter your given mission or whatever. And I think that this is something that Destiny has needed for so long. They've kind of got this artificial inflation of the playtime required to level up to max in Destiny, because you're constantly having to do everything 3 times, and then that resets every week, and so it's just like, oh my goodness me. In Anthem, that's not going to be the case. There's going to be much more focus on your pilot inside the Javelin, rather than your kind of guardian who might be a warlock, or who might be a titan. Instead, you get the kind of luxury of picking and choosing in this game, which is going to be really good. Another thing they're doing to avoid repetition is ensuring that the endgame quests are dynamic. Now, that sounds a little bit hand-wavy. I can explain a little. Basically, they're trying to go for a system that is going to mean you get an endgame contract. You get all the way through the story, you finish the critical path, and you then get told by an NPC that they need you to go and do a certain thing, right? Normally, in a game like Destiny, that would be just replaying a story mission that you had already done a million times, and then the next week you might need to do it again and again and again, etc. Whereas in Anthem, they're making a point of giving those endgame missions some kind of flex, so that you might be tasked with going to one area at one point, and then the next time you need to do that same activity, it might be in a different area doing a different thing. And sure, you can absolutely argue that this might end up still feeling really repetitive. I mean, if they just have 3 different options for you to go to, maybe it'll just feel like 3 separate missions, but you're still repeating them over and over again. But the fact that they're considering this sort of stuff now and really paying attention to the players that they know are going to get to the end game really damn fast, and making sure that they do have things to keep their content feeling a little bit more fresh, in my opinion, that's a good sign. And finally, on the topic of difficulties, the higher difficulties are going to come with higher level creatures, enemies, bad guys, bosses, things like that, and the elite or higher versions of those are actually going to change their behavior a little bit. This is something that I absolutely love when I see it in a game. You get trained on the mechanics of a boss in a kind of easier environment. So, for example, think God of War with the Valkyries. You fight each one of those Valkyries and you learn individual moves from them here and there, and then you fight against the elite or higher version of the Valkyries, the Queen of the Valkyries in that game's case, and she has all of the moves of those Valkyries available at her disposal, and she then inevitably pummels your face into the floor while shouting Valhalla, Valhalla! And you're gonna get a similar, not the same, but a similar thing coming from Anthem, where your elite and higher enemies are going to have a higher accuracy, their dodge frequency might increase, their behavior is going to be modified based on that difficulty, rather than it just being a flat out, they have more health. Stuff like that. Because as much as that can be enjoyable, and that can really crank up the difficulty of an encounter if other stuff is going on, it also does feel a little flat after a while if you're shooting something for 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes, and that's the only change to the difficulty. Like, the behavior changing is what makes it feel really rewarding when you do manage to get the kill, or get through the contract, or whatever it is that you're trying to complete. And so this is something that seems really small, like, okay, their dodge frequency is going to increase, but that means that your reflexes are going to have to be faster. That means that you're going to have to be more on the ball when you're fighting, when you're playing, when you're shooting, when you're dodging, etc. And it's just generally going to make those encounters much more energized, I would say. Those are 10 reasons why I think Anthem has a lot going for it. I think that this game is going to be really damn fun, but I mentioned that there was one thing that I wanted to say that might convince you not to buy this game, and now we're at the end of the video, it's time for me to drop the bombshell, okay? Anthem is not playable offline, or at least certainly not at launch, and I don't think that they have plans to change this. As far as I'm aware, there is no way to play the game offline. It is an online game, which is kind of the nature of these sorts of games very often. It's not a massive surprise to me, but it does mean that if you don't have a stable internet connection, you probably want to give this one a miss, certainly until your circumstances change. If this means that you have to rule the game out as one you can buy, I totally sympathize. I got Destiny 2 from Activision when it came out. They sent me a copy, I put it in my PS4, and I could not get past the main menu because the game felt that my internet was just too poor in order for me to play it. And it was pretty devastating that I just couldn't play the game because of the fact that my internet sucked at the time. And so, like I said, I totally sympathize, but I wanted to give you guys a heads up now. That said, there are plenty of reasons why you should pick up the game, and so let me know in the comments down below if you're planning to and what you might want to see next from me in terms of Anthem content, because I'd love to make some more videos for it. I'm really excited. Thanks for watching, guys. I've been MrRoflWaffles. Drop a like if you've enjoyed this list, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.